This is the Pacific Way podcast, bringing you stories that matter to Pacific peoples. Talofa Mbulavinaka, hello, and Malile, and warm Pacific greetings to you all, wherever you're tuning in from across our blue Pacific continent. In our villages, on our islands, and along our coastlines, our greatest strength is our people. But too often, many voices, especially women and marginalized groups in fisheries, are left unheard. Today's Talanoa explores the real challenges of gender equality and social inclusion in fisheries and why addressing these issues is essential for effective communication and also sustainable management here in the Pacific. We'll hear from fisheries practitioners, women fishers, youth leaders, and change makers who are not just asking for a seat at the table, but to be recognized, valued, and to actively contribute to. This is our story, this is our ocean, and this is why every voice matters. Welcome to today's episode, where we're diving into the power of storytelling and the journey ahead, the Pacific Way in fisheries. We'll be talking about how the stars to sail by a guide can help us navigate toward a more inclusive and sustainable fishing community. Let's get right into it. Now, joining us today is Mr. Duo Rudolph, who is the Deputy Director of the Marshall Islands Conservation Society. He leads a community-based conservation effort that combines traditional knowledge and with scientific methods just to protect marine ecosystems and also promote sustainable fisheries in the Marshall Islands. And Ndua is also involved in regional projects focused on coral reef resilience and climate change adaptation in the Pacific. And we have the lovely Miss Melesila Weilert, who is a respected community leader and gender advocate from Ha'atafu Tonga, known for her passionate work in promoting women's voices in coastal fisheries. With deep roots in community-based fisheries management, she champions gender equity and social inclusion across the Pacific, reminding us that a bird needs two wings to fly, and that is a woman and a man. Yakwe, Dua, and also Maulile Mele.
Hello, Lily.
Yakwe.
Now, Dua, well, you've been working closely with communities across the Marshall Islands. Now, in your day-to-day work, do you see ideas from the Stars to Sail by guide, like sharing real stories or challenging old ways of thinking, starting to take hold?
Yes. Thank you for the question. Especially with storytelling, Stars to Sail guide is very useful for us in the region, especially in this chapter on storytelling, or as we call it in Marshallese, Babanado. For us, our culture, our cultural legends and stories are our identity. Much like an official passport or an ID, stories tell where we're from and of the tribulations we've gone through to become where we're at in this day and age. I mean, one day, we will all cease to exist. What will remain are our stories to guide our future generations to come. So that's the importance of storytelling in our societies.
That's really, to me, that's one of the most unique part of our life, especially as islanders in the South Pacific, because ocean is a part of our life. We breathe the salty breeze of the ocean. We live among us in the ocean, and that's how we survive. That's part of our livelihood. And we can't even differentiate the ocean from the land. And storytelling is part of our daily life, especially that's how we can extend it to be more like a sustainable concept of living, especially when it comes to us islanders. So it's quite important because that's how we also connected to nature through the legend and also at the same time through the understanding of our indigenous knowledge. That's how we can make it extended it to the longest of it can take us from here there.
I couldn't agree with you more, Mele. That's really interesting. Since Dua had mentioned, it does sound like even the small changes in how we talk or listen, can really start to shift things. And it's really encouraging to hear, what you're both doing on the ground. And it's happening in real ways as well. Dua, like I mentioned before, you're on the ground a lot in the Marshall Islands. When there's really this, the unique matrilineal societies, with land and lineage passed down through the mother's side, that's pretty powerful when we talk about women's roles in leadership. Do you think that that makes it easier just to open up conversation around fairness and equal roles, or are there still barriers for you at home?
I still see barriers with equality and fairness, equal roles in the RMI. Regardless of being a matrilineal society, the RMI still faces challenges with gender equality. When we do consultations, for example, with communities, we see that although women are present, they're present in the decision making table. It's usually the men that are doing the talking. Today, I feel as though we have learned a lot from human rights and are now becoming more open to the idea of equality and gender roles. So yeah, it's gone better than it was before. And yes, I think we're improving now.
Now, Mele, just to shift dynamics in a Tongan setting, what do you have to say about this?
This is really one of the biggest challenge when it's come to women and men here in Tonga, because it has to do mostly with our culture, and it applies to a lot of things like fishing, crops farming, anything to do with decision making. It's always have that issue. But with what we have been doing in the village, and I will say the whole district and even the main island of Tongatapu, it's really helped. Not because we're trying to make it different by trying to compete with men when it's come to decision making. The more we do things, it really helped them, but at the same time, it's break down the barrier, because being a doer instead of doing the normal conversation, discussing on the table regarding the chances and the opportunities for women. But what we do, it really make a change to Tonga and how they look at the concept of why we are doing this, or the reason. I mean, and being a mother, try to be the bread making in the family. It's not to compete, but when it's come to the fishery, that's one of the, to me, that's one of the biggest, and I'll say the most important part of our livelihood, because when it's come to the fishing, it doesn't have any limitation when it's come to women,
Don't worry,
because
Ndua.
there is no, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be, for example, the land in Tonga, you can't own land. That's mean for us women. And to me, all our endeavors has to be limited, because it has to do mostly where, how, and what we can do with the chance that we can have a piece of land to do our crops farming. But when it's come to the ocean, fishing to me is the best opportunity.
Mhm.
And we have the huge um, chances for us to do what we can in order to bring a sustainable income, or even with our social impacts, we can always do it with the ocean, and quite a lot of things as well. And that, as I mentioned earlier, it's quite impossible for when we talk about fishing in Tonga to say we are doing it on its own like the ocean. It has to include the land in a lot of areas that for the end result, it will make it complete, and it's also help when it's come to the equality of men and women.
It's powerful that women already hold such an important place culturally, but like you, like Ndua, and you have just mentioned, there's always layers when it comes to actual influence and decision making. Ndua, what's the general feeling among communities when it comes to talking about fairness and inclusion? Do you feel like people are becoming more open to it, or is there still some resistance?
Definitely feeling more open to the fact. Like right now, the RMI has currently elected a woman to be our head of state, our president, for the second time now. So that speaks loudly on our position on fairness and inclusion. This undoubtedly encourages our younger generations, especially women, to aim high in their ambitions, not just to be, play women roles when they grow up, but they can definitely be the president one day.
That's nice.
Awesome, Tua.
I mean,
Awesome.
yeah, change doesn't really happen overnight, does it? But it's nice
That's right.
to it's but those small signs of progress you mentioned, it really sounds promising. Um, like do I've mentioned like change is never easy, and I'm sure you've had some moments where it felt slow or tough. And what keeps you motivated? Well, just to keep showing up and pushing forward.
Okay. What keeps me motivated is the sheer commitment of these communities in the face of climate change. We're dealing with the greatest global adversary of the time, which we as small island nations have very little contribution to its worsening, which is very sad. Yet we are amongst the loudest in climate advocacy. So that really speaks to us being small island nations.
Hmm.
We're not the ones that are causing climate change, but we speak the loudest. So
And
that to me is what's really pushing me forward. It's their commitment to ensuring that they have a space for their future generation when they come.
Well, thank you, Do. I think a lot of people in this space can actually relate to what you just mentioned. And I mean, what about you, Mele?
well, actually, with what we are doing, we are also under the umbrella of social, economic, and also environmental development, which really related to what we are doing right now, because there are a lot of challenges, but things change, especially when we get involved. And with men in our community or even in Tonga, finally realize we are much of a help instead of competing with them, as I mentioned earlier. And I don't like the idea of mentioning the word competing, because the fact is things change, especially the more we try to do and get involved with a lot of activities regarding the ocean, like after the tsunami, we do try to bring back what has been destroyed by doing it the best way we can. For example, we try to clean up the beach, clean up the land with plastic, and everything has to go for recycle. But when it's come to the challenge facing women, it's still on, because it's not from men. Mostly it's come from women. Because with those who somehow committed, and I don't want to say like myself, but that's what I face most of the time. The more I try to do things that was never a part of our task or even family responsibility, like deep sea fishing and also fishing itself, there was somehow at the beginning, I was really, really offended by a lot of issues. But the more I tried to calculate it and try to apply it for social and even our economic, and also how we would complement or even help out with our environmental issues, it's just really helped to change, especially. And I believe that's what we have done so far, and uh, probably the most effective ways when we try to do things in order finding solution instead of trying to do it because for the sake of one reason. But with these three things, that's mostly the backbones of the whole idea.
Thank you, Melev. I love how you have unpacked almost with that explanation. For Ndua, you've done a lot of work with the youth across Micronesia. What are you seeing from them? Are they stepping up into leadership roles and helping, just to make that push change forward?
Yeah, definitely. Youth are coming up. They're bringing their voices up and making it known that we can do something also. It's not we're not leaving everything to our elders. It's our future. We have a part in it too. A big example of that when you look at you know the the global arena of COP29 just last year in 2024. They did specifically have participation from youth members during that COP meeting. So that really speaks a lot into how the world is changing and how youth are their contributions are being more valued these days as compared to before. But also, just looking at how much we're retaining students here. One of our biggest threats was out migration. There's not much opportunity for youths that are graduating to come back and work, but we're seeing a lot of turnovers where students are coming back home to start working and doing their parts for their country. So that's another promising factor that really shows that we're going towards a better future.
I love hearing that. I mean, young people really do bring a different kind of energy and openness to the table. What about the people living with disabilities? Are they getting the same support and opportunities to be heard and involved as well?
So in regards to disabilities, um, I think there's still much that needs to be done. But also, I want to give credit to the work that has been done towards this area. It's a very sensitive area dealing with disabilities. Firstly, because some of us where we're doing works on the grounds don't have the capacity to communicate with these individuals. So it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of training, capacity building for us to be able to deal with it. But it's all worth it. There needs to be time set aside to deal with making sure that these people with disabilities are being brought, their voices are being represented in the decision-making table. They should have a seat with as much as, men, women, youth have in the seat. There needs to be someone that's talking on behalf of disabilities. Another issue is with mental health. It's also something that has been overlooked in our regions for so long. We must also find a way to include people with mental health into these discussions and make sure that their interests are represented as we're, establishing whether it be national policy or whether it should be fisheries policy and things like that. So everyone needs a voice in these table.
You know, that's something we don't talk about enough,
Yeah,
Dua. And yeah, like, yes, Mele.
yeah. The fact is, I wish that we get Tonga can be more like your island because to me it's far more advanced in the sense of because you're working with the departments. But remember, I'm working with the community. I'm from the community, and what I'm doing, it's not because I was born to do what that's not. This is not my professions, but because of what happened, I can say it has to do mostly with the hardship of and also the outcome of climate change affected our village. And there's a lot and lots of issues, but I try, this is what we are trying to do with women's in the village, even the district. We try to find solution of what we are facing. And when it's come to the youth, there is a lot of, to me, sometimes probably that's why my hair is all white because I hardly can sleep most time because of thinking of what I saw and what is going on. And one reason is even they live here in the island, but at the same time, instead of thinking to do the fishing or use the ocean as part of how they learn about their life skill, they were more thinking, I can't wait to become 18 so I can go to Australia and New Zealand, the working scheme. And it's about that. That's one reason why we have to do more than what we are doing right now, because there is no just thing as we come together with the youth and sit down and try to do more like Tafono. Tafono is the village meeting, because most of, and now in Tonga, they are more like focusing into education and they're just saying, uh, at the end of the day, nobody's left behind, which I totally don't believe it. What I mean by don't believe it, not everyone is for the classroom. Fishing and farming are the two basic livelihood for Tonga. And also to me, if we want to make a change, we have to somehow try to find a way or solution to encourage and even try to persuade and convince the young ones to understand at the end of the day, we are going to face the reality of life by trying to do to have a life skill. And when we speak of life skill, we don't have any money, but we have the assets, meaning the ocean and the land, where we can always make a difference with the using that resources.
Now, Ndua, let's talk about how this looks on the ground. Have you seen any real strong examples where young people were not just part of the conversation, but actually helped shape decisions or lead the work?
Yes, youth advocacy has really improved here. Like as a matter of fact, there's an organization that's set especially for youth here in the RMI. It's called Jojigo. Um, that in Marshallese means your home. And it's a it's an entity where youth come together and they do climate talks. They talk about they try and make it visual for people to better understand, not just saying climate change is this and that, but really try and visualize what that's looking like for our country here in the RMI, what it looks like for to see climate change when you wake up in the morning. You see that the waves are coming up higher and higher every day you wake up. Things like that. They're doing youth campaigns for our nation to kind of inspire youth to come out and share their thoughts and do their part for their nation. So it's really inspiring thing to see an organization that's really dedicated for youth, and having a space for youth is definitely a starting point. They need to recognize exactly where they can bring forth their great ideas, because if there's nothing there, they're just shooting up anywhere, but not really understanding if they're reaching the right channels. So having that organization really helps push their voices forward.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode and the series of Stars to Sail By. Over the past episodes, we've introduced the guide, shared navigation tips, challenged stereotypes and bias, embraced inclusive language in storytelling, and now we set our sights on the way forward, the Pacific Way. Thanks for sailing with us. Today, we reflected on why including women, youth, and communities in fisheries management matters. Because when every voice is heard, we protect more than just the ocean, we protect our way of life. Every voice matters, every story counts. We'll catch you next time with more ideas and more ideas and journeys from the Jesse Fisheries Space, Vinaka Wakalevo, Tanyo Tomas, and see you next time.